Hello students, welcome back to the second part of the Wipeout painting. This is our second project of the semester, and we're removing paint from a toned brown surface. So on the left, again, you have the picture of the still life, and on the right, I've started the process of redrawing. So to recap really quick, I just had gone through and wiped down everything and pulled away a lot of paint. And there's definitely places where I might have overwiped on purpose to kind of pull some of that excess paint away and get a lighter value. That's how we're getting our whites, is by wiping away. So once you go through and do that, things are a little fuzzy, things are a little soft. You've already kind of done a little bit of a scratch drawing and kind of done part of that. So now we're going to go back in, and you can see me working with my brush. I'm loading it up with the brown burnt umber paint, and I'm using that to kind of redraw back into it. So if there's a bit that's a little bit off, just like that little part there, I'll just scrub it away and I'll kind of redraw the lines with my brush. So this is really useful in that you can start to kind of push and pull. If you need to get a darker value, you put some paint back on. If you need to get a lighter value, you pull some paint back off. So that's how you're pushing and pulling. It's just putting more paint in or pulling paint away where you need a different value. The beauty of this process is the idea that when you go through and use it, you can get very nice, subtle light gradations. There's a real nice softness that you get in this process. And this color, burnt umber, dries extremely quickly. If you have this mixed with some type of medium, which I do, I'm using the Neo Meg by Gamblin, then you're going to be able to go through, paint this down today, and you'll wake up tomorrow and the entire painting will be dry. So I'm going through, kind of fixing the can up. Here I am starting to look at the bottle. So the photo and my painting are not cropped exactly the same way. There is a little bit of a difference there, especially as like how I see it. So you'll notice that things don't perfectly line up, but they're pretty close. So a lot of this stage of the process, what I'm trying to do is reestablish my shadows, maybe start to reestablish some of the drawing that was missing as I was going through and starting to kind of wipe that away. I lost some detail. So now I'm kind of putting some detail back in. I'm kind of trying to look at how is the word Utica there painted? What type of shapes does that cursive in the Utica look like? Those are the kind of things I'm trying to copy. I'm going to go up here and I'll do some with the Middle Ages as well. I'm not trying to write my own handwriting anywhere. I'm trying to copy the shapes that I see. I'm using a rag to maybe even the tone in the background a little bit. Remember that when you go into the background, what you're able to do is pretty much just manipulate and change things that are going to make your objects and your overall picture stronger. Don't worry about what's actually there. I'm not going to paint a treadmill with a wall back there. I'm trying to paint, a gradation of brown, that maybe is like middle value. So when I put the bright or the dark, hard brown strokes on the bottle pushes forward and looks like it's sitting in front of that middle, not so interesting background. So that's a lot of what I was doing. I think I'm dipping my the corner of my brush and my finger inside the medium as I go through and try to pull some of this away. And that's how I'm getting some extra paint pulled away. So I talked about that a little bit in the last video. When you go through and you just can't get it, then you can kind of dip it in some medium or some terps and pull a little extra away. I wish I had a kneaded eraser at this point. That would probably have been a very good tool for this and have done quite a bit to try and pull that away. But so far, at the time that I filmed this, I didn't have one in my studio. So you can see, looking at the picture, the skull is very, very white, very, very light. So I've had to pull extra away, and I've ruined my drawing again, but I can go back and just redraw that again. So I'm really kind of putting some decent pressure. You can see my hand holding the canvas so I can add a little more extra pressure as I scrub that rag and pull a little extra away to get a brighter value of white. Because we're not using a white paint, we're using the white of the canvas. So if you need white, you have to pull the paint away. You need a darker value, then you add paint back on. You add some more burnt umber. So generally just using the rag to kind of pull stuff away. So this is almost like a second wipeout. And I think I felt like when I was painting this, I hadn't pulled away enough paint. So I went back and did it again. And I was being a little bit more specific and putting a little more pressure. I think I'm going to start on the letters, the M and A for Middle Ages. They have their little logo there in the middle of that circle. And again, let's see, I'm going a little bit farther outside of what, the highlight might be. I might pull a little extra away. But the idea is if I pull extra, I can always go back with my brush and the brown and fix that, control it. It's the beauty of this process, is just trying to go through and manipulate it as you need to. All right, so here we go with the next stage of brown. This one was a little bit of a longer stage, so I am speeding this up a little extra fast. So I'm going back, I'm reestablishing all those little details. I'm trying to get just a little more definition. And the other thing that happens as you go through your session, at the start, things move around really easy, things get fuzzy really easy. But as this slowly starts to dry, maybe in your second hour of painting, you're going to find that things start to stick a little bit more, that if you put them down, they're not going to move around as much. And if you pull them up, they're going to kind of want to stay a little more. So that's a good thing, because I think you get a little extra control when that happens. So this is almost a third time I'm going through and drawing the Howler monkey skull. And I think each time I get it a little more right and get things a little bit more accurately. It's kind of definitely an example of not settling for the first one or the first version being good enough and then just quitting. I'm trying again. If something looks wrong, I can wipe it down and soften it up, and then I can go right back in and try it again. And that is a good step to have in your process, especially as you start. A lot of people, when they go through and use this process, they're going to do this as a means of setting up the light in your picture and setting up kind of like a base, an underpainting is what it's called. And then you would go on top of this and paint your colors and paint all the different variations of color and stuff like that. And we're going to have an opportunity to try and do that a little bit later in the semester. Right now, what we're trying to do is just really focus on, try this technique, try something that's not necessarily something you have tried or would try in your normal style, so that, when we get through this, you have the experience of trying something that maybe pushes you into a uncomfortable place, And you can see whether it's something that you're good at and you want to maybe try again, or if it's something that you're definitely not into, you don't feel like you do a very good job with it. So then you just say, okay, I tried it, I'm done, I'm moving on. So I keep going through, I'm kind of reestablishing these darks in the bottle now, really trying to build those up and get those blocked in. I feel like I have the lights kind of reestablished in a good way on the bottle, so that as I make the dark areas on the bottle, I'm starting to get a nice contrast. So it starts to look a little bit more like the bottle. Because we're not using pure white, you're not going to get it to look 100% full value, full contrast, but you can get it to look hopefully kind of, it feels like it's kind of the same thing. So that's the goal that we're shooting for, is trying to set that up. On the base here, I was trying to do a little bit of wood texture. So here, going back with the Rough Stuff white eraser pencil, just pulling out some extra highlights on there. I would normally use a kneaded eraser, but don't have it, so push that extra little bit of white. Like I said before, I'll take it every so often, it'll come off, you don't see it, and I'll wipe it on a rag over to the side to clean off that eraser so the eraser doesn't get too loaded with paint. So I'm not putting any on, I'm only trying to make sure that I'm pulling it off. Here I'm using the brush. I think I'm using a little bit of Terps to go through and try to pull it away. Also trying to lighten up that way. Sometimes the brush is also nice. If you clean it off, you can kind of scrub it in a certain area and blend your value so that it's somewhere in between. It doesn't end up being just one or the other. You can kind of make it a middle tone and then go back with your eraser and get some highlights again. We're nearing the end, almost there. Using the rag again, evening some things out, adding a little paint in the background, double checking textures, edges. Are there any places where I need to pull some extra paint away or put some extra paint down? A lot of times this kind of painting, this technique, is not going to be something that is 100% finished. It's just going to look like it has all the important information, and then you can go back and then paint on top of it later to get all the rest of the information finished. So kind of redrawing just a little bit right here at the end, reestablishing some of those points, whether it's like an edge where the mouth overlaps from the top to the bottom, or the nose overlaps in front of the eye. Check your shadows. Keep going through and trying to just get those values right. Make sure that you use a softer blending technique if you want a soft edge, where you have a hard brush stroke, like I'm writing the letters back down again, making sure that those have some crisper edges so that that stands out as something that's not attached to, or it's on top of the can. Little last details. Hopefully you have a good experience with this project. It's a little bit tricky, it's a little bit messy, so expect your hands to get a little bit dirty, but in the end you should have something that you like. So here's my finished product. I think now that you can see it without the process of painting, you can see the highlights and the darks, and good luck with your own.